Time now to chat with Danny West, who, of course, covers recruiting for HawgSports.com, part of 247 Sports, and he's with us now here on Ruscin Zach. Danny, how you doing?
Good, buddy. Appreciate y'all having me on.
You realize this is the end of your career. Coming on here with us, this is the end.
Yeah, this is it. It's been a good run, but I understand this is it.
Yeah, this is the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. So I mean, that's how it is. Let's start with the transfer today from Missouri. What do we know about him?
Yeah, you know what? They've done a really good job in the transfer portal. I think we all agree that they needed some help on the defensive front, especially when you lose a guy like Justin Marshall, of course, who fortunately for him was drafted over the weekend. But yeah, Trey Williams, defensive end, he's 6'5", 260. So when you think about size and the need for more size, he certainly offers that. He was a really good player at Missouri. He played for Barry Odom, which obviously makes a strong connection there. And then he actually transferred last December. He hit the portal, and he was on his way to Houston. And lo and behold, he kind of had a change of heart and re-entered last month, and Arkansas capitalized there. So, good player. He's put up some pretty impressive stats. This is an Arkansas unit. For as much as they improved last year, Derek, you know as well as anybody, they need more pass rush, right? I think they were 12th in the league last year, and I want to say bottom of the league against the run as well. So a lot of room for improvement there. But again, I think they've done a good job with Trey Williams and John Ridgway, of course, coming in from Illinois State. Then you bring in Markel Etsy from Missouri as well. So you've got some pieces now. They should have more depth. We'll see, what they can do with it, but the bodies are in place now.
Does he give them instant pass rush? I've been banging the drum that this is the glaring weakness because they're not good enough in the back end to just rush 3, drop 8. I mean, they've got to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. You've had 3 bodies to what you had. Does this equal, last year I think it was 14 sacks is what they have. They've got to double that number.
Sure, yeah. Well, you would hope so, right? I mean, you still got to rely on guys who are still here. I think Zach Williams, to me, is the guy that really stood out. Man, you just look at him, the change that he's made to his body in, what amounts to a year or two here now. Really impressive-looking guy, as well as Jashad Stewart, who had he missed most of the spring. He had some injuries there, but those 2 guys are kind of the guys that need to step up. I'm still curious about Matteo Soli. Where's he going? I think he had a really good or a solid freshman year, and then, didn't do a whole lot last year. I know he's dealt with some injuries as well, but they need those guys to step up. Yeah, I think that's their thinking behind bringing in a guy like Trey Williams. Obviously you lost Julius Coates, who, people have different opinions on that. I'm of the opinion that's a pretty big loss. I think he was on his way to potentially, taking that next step coming in as a senior this year. And unfortunately for Arkansas, he took a different route.
Is Sam Pittman or Barry Odom probably more so taking a look at teams that were in the college football playoff? All 4 of those teams were 2.5 defensive lines deep. I mean, we've seen this sort of trend. Alabama started it. Clemson picked it up. Now everybody else is moving towards a lot of bodies, a lot of rotation. You can't just play 6 guys on the defensive line. You've got to have somewhere between 8 and 10.
Yeah. With the way the offenses are run nowadays, everybody. When Alabama is running to everybody's running both guys, and in order to try to counter that, you need a lot of depth. So you bring up a big player. And I think Pittman, through the course of the week, he really made no bones about it. He said we need more depth, we need more experience, and more size on that defensive front. Last year, they played really well defensively in the first few games, but I truly believe they wore out towards the end of the year, and so much of that is about depth. So maybe they've addressed some of that now.
We're talking with Danny West from 247 HawgSports.com with us here on Ruscin and Zach. I talk a lot, and the draft brought this up again to me about the talent level and in this league, and that's where it begins. Arkansas's got to upgrade talent. You look at this roster constantly. What have they been able to do in a year and change from one of the least talented rosters in the conference? Where are they now?
Yeah, there's still room for improvement, obviously. Still a long way to go. I don't think they're there yet. But one of the best things they've done is just taken the guys they've got right now and made them bigger and stronger under Jamil Walker there. He's done a really good job. Like a Zach Williams, for example, going back to him. You look at him 2 years ago, man, he looked like a kid. You had a feeling, he's probably going to be a big man one day. And that's the trend for so many of these guys, like a Ricky Stromberg. It looks outrageous now. So they've come a long way in that regard. You kind of have to win with what you've got first. And ultimately, over time, you're trying to attract more and more talent. It's been, I'd say they're a little bit ahead of pace this year for the current class. I think they're up to number 14 in the country. That's hard to argue for, Arkansas based on where they've been in recent years. 14th in the country with a chance to go back up to number 10 or 11 this weekend with a guy like Amarion Harris, another 4-star offensive lineman out of Little Rock. He's going to decide on Mother's Day at 2 o'clock Sunday. So we'll see what happens there. I think Arkansas is in a really good spot. So, you keep picking up guys like Harris and Andrew Chamblee, another 4-star down there. It takes time, but slowly and surely they're getting it done.
Flip over to the other side of the ball. Are you comfortable with KJ at the quarterback spot? I know there's a lot of hand-wringing over him this spring, but I thought he looked, fairly competent during the spring game.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I go out there and I watch the first 2 scrimmages, and I got to be honest, I was a little bit worried about Arkansas's quarterback situation to the point to where I was like, man, maybe they need to try to find another Felipe Franks in that portal, And then I do think there's something to the idea that KJ he might just be a gamer, like you flip the lights on and now he's ready to play. Maybe he's not so much a practice player, but I think he answered some questions in that spring game. He's got to get the accuracy, completion percentage up. I think everybody agrees with that. But some of those deep balls, man, you think back to the Missouri game last year, he can place them in there now. So obviously that's a big part of this offense. Do I feel great about it? I feel decent about it, to answer your question.
So June 1, I mean, this thing is in terms of visits and recruiting is it's going kind of back to normal, isn't it?
Yeah, finally. I've been just sitting around on my thumbs for a year and a half, it feels like. So finally getting some kids back on campus, that'll be really good. They've got them lined up already. Trying to find my list here, but several coming in for official visits starting June 4th through the 6th. You've got some big-time players out of Georgia. Jerron Willis, a 4-star linebacker. His teammate, the tight end, Tyrus Washington, that I actually wrote about today on HawgSports. And then several over the next several weekends will be coming in. Just added a story on HawgSports from Steve Wilfong a couple of minutes ago. Isaac Thompson is a 4-star safety. He'll be here at the end of next month. The list goes on and on, buddy. They are attracting talent. Does it mean they're going to get all of them? Probably not. I mean, I talk about the ranking. It's one thing to be 11th or 12th, in the middle of May. Now you got to finish that, right? And that's always been the tough part. But, got to get them on campus first, and that's about to happen here in a few weeks.
What are they going to do at the tight end spot? I mean, everybody in college football right now is running 2 and 3 tight end sets because they're some of them are just big wide receivers, but Arkansas is just lacking there. And we've had Pittman on before, and he wants to go big, and he wants to run 2 running backs, and he wants to pound the football if he can. Is this a situation where you're just waiting for somebody to show up, or are they just going to punt on this idea and go in a different direction?
Yeah, I think they're still waiting on somebody to show up. And, Blake Kern, I think, surprised some people in the passing game last year. We all saw Blake as a big old country boy tight end that only blocks, right? And then he goes out there, and he's probably their best receiver at the tight end spot. But that somebody is probably Hudson Henry. He flashed again during the spring practices there. He's got the talent. I'm not sure what's held him back. Maybe he's had some injuries that have slowed him up a little bit, but I still feel like Hudson can do so much more, and I think he's capable of taking that next step. So maybe he'll do so. And then from a recruiting standpoint, you only signed 1 in the last year's class. That kind of surprised me, guys. So now I think this year you're going to sign 2. You've got 1 committed, and Dax Courtney out of DeWitt. or DeWitt, depending on your listeners, how they want to say it, right? But Dax Courtney is committed. And then, of course, Tyrus Washington is a kid that I mentioned coming in from Georgia next month. He's going to take an official big-time kid there.
So, Danny, with Treylin Burks, like what's his ceiling? Like, what can he do in 2021?
Yeah, man. I mean, I almost feel like Mike Woods leaving. I mean, you can look at it one of two ways, but I think that kind of hurts Treylin a little bit. Now you can double him up, and Mike kind of alleviated some of that at times last year. So that's going to be interesting to follow. But, man, look at him. What's his ceiling? I think he's this past week we've seen two stories going for next year, kind of forecasting the top first round there of next year's draft. And I think I've seen him at like 12th and 15th. I think he's every bit of that good and probably going to show people that this year.
From a schematic standpoint, this is not you can't take Treylin Burks and put him in the same spot every single time. You're going to have to move him around so that they can't double him. You're going to have to put him in the slot, put him in motion, do all sorts of things, sort of like what they did last year. But last year you had the luxury of having Trey Knox and Mike Woods on the outside. You could use Burks as that slot receiver. Now I don't want to say you've lost one of your positions, but there isn't a natural fill for Mike Woods.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's going to have to be by committee, I would think. You know, Davion Warren is a guy that I think we kind of forget about. You look at the first two games of last season, it wasn't Treylin Burks, it wasn't Mike Woods, it was Davion that stepped up and ultimately helped them win that game down in Starkville, especially. He had a really big game there. So he's coming back off an injury. Is he 100%? We'll see. I think he will be, but Trey Knox, man, it was good to see him go up and get that 42-yarder in the spring game just from a confidence standpoint, right? I mean, you want that for Trey. Maybe that would be a turning point for him. He's certainly talented. He had a lot going on last year, so hopefully he's rebounded and can help fill that void.
Danny West, covering recruiting, HawgSports.com, with us here on Ruscin and Zach. We enjoyed it, Danny. We'll have to do it again sometime. Thank you so much.
We can do it, man. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, Danny West with us here on Ruscin and Zach. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.